there, fantasy owners. Welcome to Lift the Cup Fantasy, or LTC Fantasy as some call it. We're rolling along with our team reviews, and today we're going to look at the San Jose Sharks. We'll check out who led them in different stats for goalies, defensemen, and forwards. Who was their biggest fantasy disappointment this season? Who's their biggest fantasy surprise? And who on their roster was relevant fantasy-wise on a weekly basis? And we'll also take a peek back at some streamers that would help you out through the different parts of the regular season there. These videos do continue to come out a few times a week because no better way to enjoy the fantasy off-season than watch the rest of the playoffs and talk a little bit of fantasy hockey. Don't forget to subscribe. That way you can catch your favorite team's review. Maybe you want to catch your rivals review. Maybe you want to catch all 32. Or just take a peek at a team or two that sometimes gets overlooked fantasy-wise. So we'll get right into it. Goalies who led him was James Reimer. He led him in games played at 48. Also led him in wins at 19. Kaapo Kähkönen deadline acquisition led him in goals against average at 2.58 and save percentage at 912. A little bit skewed because he did play part of the season in Minnesota, obviously. Overall, Reimer did have a decent season. Not great season, but he did have a good season on, realistically, San Jose is an underwhelming team out there. The acquisition of Kähkönen did kind of murky up the waters on what they're going to do next season, obviously, because Reimer and Hill are both signed for next season, and Kähkönen's an RFA, so they're probably going to qualify him. Different rumors out there, whether they're trying to trade Reimer or they're just not going to qualify Kähkönen, but it'll be interesting to see what the crease looks like going forward in San Jose there. Defensemen who led him in goals, it was a tie between the two old guys, Brent Burns and Erik Karlsson at 10 each. Burns led him in assists at 54 and points at 54. Plus minus was Jacob Magna at -1. Nicholas Milosh led him in hits at 158. Blocks was Mario Ferraro at 151. Should mention, Burns just got eked out there. He had 150 blocks to the 151 there. And Burns did lead him in shots at 203. Looking back overall at their defensemen, Burns had another good season. Not quite the numbers we're used to him putting up there, but if you look at it, take the name out of it, 54-point defenseman, that's pretty good value there fantasy-wise. Karlsson was good when he was healthy, but that's his biggest issue is staying healthy. So got him for 50 games. Hopefully you didn't draft him too high. You got decent value there. Forwards who led him in goals, it was Timo Meier. He had 35 goals. Also led him in assists at 41 and points at 76. Plus minus was Ellis Schmelevsky. Hopefully I said that right. He was +2. Timo Meier led him in hits at 162, which is nice to see. That's a little added value for an offensive guy. Nick Medino led him in blocks at 102 blocks. So you had a forward with over 100 blocks. So that's a ton. That's some nice fantasy points there if blocks are considered in your league. Too bad his offensive numbers aren't quite there. But if you need blocks in a roto league, that's definitely somebody to look at there. And shots on goal was Timo Meier at 326. Looking at the forward group as a whole, obviously Meier had a great season. So did Hurdle. Hurdle had 64 points this year. Meier had 76. Couture, what can you say? He's a warrior out there, and he had another decent season. Can't say not too bad about him. Couture's good out there. He just gets injury prone a little bit. Dahlin's at times showed some flashes when he was up on the top line, especially at the beginning of the season there. We'll move along. Biggest fantasy disappointment for me has to be Erik Karlsson, because San Jose gave up a haul for him when they did acquire him, then signed him to that big extension. And since he's been over, the most games he's played in a season is 56. And you have to think Karlsson's name where he's probably getting drafted. You're probably disappointed on the production you're getting out of him. And with his age and injury history, it's kind of telling you to stay away unless it's a very late round draft pick there. Biggest fantasy surprise? kind of hard to pick one on San Jose because they all kind of figured it out. I guess have to say Reimer, given his age, that he did have a pretty good season on an underwhelming team. He got you some wins. His save percentage was up there. Goals against was decent. So considering his age, that'd probably be the biggest fantasy surprise in San Jose. So who on their roster was relevant fantasy-wise on a weekly basis? Well, Burns was on the back end. Same with Meyer and Hurdle up front. Streamers for them, Couture was really close, but I put him down as a streamer just because his production was a little bit lower. Obviously, Carlson, if he was healthy, he'd be a decent streamer. His ownership was up there that told you probably wouldn't be able to stream him, but I would consider him more of a streaming type defenseman now, considering his injury history. And Barabanov, Dahlin, and Rudolph Balcers, at different points of the season, that's somebody that you could plug on your lineup on a light night, etc. Hope you did enjoy today's episode. If you did, please remember to hit like, hit subscribe, and remember that notification bell. And enjoy the rest of the NHL playoffs, fantasy owners.